Hi everyone and welcome back. Happy Friday. I hope that you're staying safe, that you're well, and yay, let's just acknowledge, okay, that we've got till Friday. We got to Friday. So I want to know what's been happening in your week. Have you had trouble with the ex? Are things getting a little fraught with you right now? This week has been a week of weeks. You know, there's been court hearings going ahead. There's been telephone, virtual hearings going ahead. It's been a week. And I guess part of this week has just reminded me the need to stay focused and the need to just take each day as it comes. Take each day as it comes. So one of the things I had recently was emergency applications that have been going berserk, and I get why. I understand from both sides of this fence. Actually, I understand that if you're a parent and you're worried about sending your children to a place where you feel that they may not be safe, or how about if communication is so bad that when you're communicating with the ex that they're not telling you if your child is with somebody that's vulnerable or not, or are they self-fighting? There's so many if, buts and maybes here. And so because there's a huge lack of communication, people are issuing emergency applications. Now, look, the courts are open. Inquiries are coming in, the court staff are coming in. So I totally get that the emergency applications are going to be an absolute thing, because you know what, on one hand you think it's no good reason to breach a court order, but then you know there's no court order out there that's going to cover global pandemics. There really isn't. So one of the things that I've been dealing with a lot recently is emergency applications that have been made, and not just emergency applications, something that in the legal trade they call emergency ex parte. It's one of those things. If you know, you know, but if you don't know, the ex parte, or without notice, I'm not sure which sounds any more relatable, to be honest with you, but the without notice bit means that basically somebody has rocked up virtually to court, put some papers in and made and saw an application without you knowing, okay? And the court and the judge makes a decision there and then, even if it's an interim one. And what I'm finding recently is that the judges are making, you know, I am broad stroking here, I admit, are making judgments and decisions in favour of the applicant because they're there and they're going to err on the side of caution. So listen, whether you're that person that needs to make that emergency application, or whether or not you're the person in receipt of that emergency application, okay? The thing about emergency, especially emergency ex parte applications, which is, I guess, what I'm really talking about here. The thing about that really is that they come as a shock, because it's not the traditional way of making an application. Normally, when you make an application, you think, oh, okay, so traditionally a C100 will go into court. That normally triggers off CAFCAS, and then there's a court hearing around 5 or 6 weeks. That's pre-pandemic, mind. There's going to trigger off a court hearing, so you know in advance when your court hearing is. Now at the moment that's just not happening. It's not happening. What's happening is that because of the nature of the situation, because communication has badly deteriorated between the parties, is that applications are being made on a without notice basis. And what's happening, I'm getting a lot of queries from both sides of people that need to make that application, and also some people who have been in the receipt of the emergency application. So I'm going to just do a little tutorial about emergency applications, and what I'm going to try and do before I come to the other thing that I've put in the title of this live, I'm going to just talk through exactly what you need to do if you're on either side of that emergency application. Devin, Good afternoon to you, sir. I will be dealing with, you have tuned in at the right time, okay? So I'm going to just talk a little bit about what you do on either side of that application, okay? So if you are the parent that needs to make an emergency application, they're normally, especially nowadays, they're normally made on what's called an emergency ex parte basis. So I'm just going to assume for now, okay, that you guys haven't got a court order, okay? Or I suppose it doesn't even matter if you do, I guess. No, it doesn't matter if you do. So the thing you're going to need to do is to complete the C100. Now, the C100 is something that you can download from the internet. Devon, I hope you're taking notes. You can download it from the internet, and it's a big ass form, okay? So just wade your way through it, okay? And sometimes people need help with what they want. So when you're downloading a C100, my key tips are: be specific. Know exactly what you want. And I say this because some people will go, well, I just want some contact. It's a bit like walking into a greengrocer's and saying, well, I'd like some apples. That could anything, you could be given anything from 1 to a bushel. So be specific. Secondly, if you are having to make an emergency application, you're filling out that C100, there's a part of that C100 that deals specifically with emergency hearings and without notice. Now, to be clear, the without notice bit means without the other person knowing, okay? And most of the time, at the moment, I'm seeing a lot of applications that fall into that category, okay? And I'm just going to take a sip of coffee, because I have talked non-stop today, what with court hearings and meetings and stuff. So there's a part of that C100, okay, that deals specifically with emergency applications and applications without notice. Most of the time, especially in this global pandemic, you're going to be needing to fill out the emergency and the ex parte bit, the without notice bit, okay? You don't need mediation. Okay, so if you look, normally your traditional path is to seek out mediation first, and there's a few exemptions. Well, guess what? Emergency or urgency, I realise they're a bit different, but it sounds the same, are one of the exemptions for mediation. So you tick those, and that means you don't have to, because honestly, you're just not going to have time to have mediation. I'm saying this on the prefix that you have tried to communicate with the ex and all of that has failed horribly and you're in an emergency situation, okay? Please do not mistake me. An emergency application should not be your go-to, okay? But right now I'm seeing a lot of cases where communication between parties have really deteriorated to a point where you've got no option, okay? And that's who I'm talking to right now, okay? So that gets you out of mediation. So what you do is you complete the C100 form. If you have concerns about your children, you complete the additional and supplemental C1A. Devon, I hope you're taking notes. Complete the additional C1A. It's a supplemental form that goes together. So prepare yourself for quite a lot of paperwork, okay? Right, because when you filled out that in, okay, so, and by the way, sometimes you can do this online, most of the time you can't. I'm not advising people to complete their C100s online, mainly because it doesn't let you, at least I don't think it does, it doesn't allow you to complete the C1A together as well. So online, if your court covers online applications, that's fine, but that assumes that you've been down a mediation route and that you haven't got any concerns. Spoiler alert, you're in a global pandemic and most of the applications right now that are being made are on an emergency basis. So, like I said, complete that C100. If you have concerns, complete the C1A. I'm advising everybody to either go down and hand the forms into court. Court buildings are actually still open, okay? Or I would go in and post them. Either way, once you complete the C100 and you complete the C1A, you're going to need to sign and photocopy that 4 times. Then you send that into the court, okay? The court will call an emergency hearing, all right? In some places, courts are allowing people who need a very, 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 very urgent hearing to rock up at court, okay? But ring the court ahead to make sure. Different courts are working in totally different ways, all right? Devon, I'm just catching up on some of the comments, love. They are police staff. How do I get it? Okay. They are, who are they? Police staff and telling me to kill them before I see them. Not sure I understand your comment, sweetheart, but I hope that was really helpful. Now, if you're on the other side of being in receipt of an emergency application, you will have had those papers being served, and your ex will have gone through the same process that I've just explained to Devon here. Okay. You will have a court hearing. Now, one thing is for certain is that when there is an emergency hearing, guaranteed, there will be a return hearing date. And that return hearing date is typically within a week. So if that's you and you're here and you're within a week, turn up to that court hearing date. Always, always, always prepare a 2-page position statement. And if you're struggling with any of that, shoot and holler at me, and I'll see what I can do to help. Okay. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about briefly is, you know, the world has pressed pause. The world has pressed pause on our lives right now, and people are evaluating what they do with their time and with whom they're doing it with. Now, listen, there are a bunch of people who out there right now who will have been working in perhaps a 9-to-5 job. Perhaps they weren't happy with the career, or perhaps they weren't in a job that they liked doing in the first place. And they're suddenly thinking right now at the end of it, because no one knows what's going to happen at the other side. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty at the end of this. People are starting to wonder, what else can I do with my time? What else? How can I make a difference? So if you're one of those people that are thinking, how can I now make a difference with my career? How can I make a difference in people's lives? And you yourself have been through the court proceedings, and you suddenly thought to yourself, you know, I could do that better, or, you know, I know I've got my solicitor, but actually this and this missing. I recently did a blog, and on that blog, I don't know if some of you managed to read it, but one of the things that I talked about was that whilst I know some amazing solicitors and barristers, I can't ignore what people are saying. And one of the things that people are saying is, first of all, they're charging quite a lot of money. Okay, they're charging a lot of money. They're not doing a lot of joined up thinking. You know, the action happens outside the courtroom, so you know that's just a fact. So they're not doing a lot of joined up thinking, and actually, a lot of people are giving up when they don't need to be given up. You guys are much more than a statistic. You guys are much more than a client number. What I've noticed generally, what people are saying to me, and the reason why actually people are deciding to do things very differently, is because they didn't feel like they were getting the customer service that they expected. And that's massive. I couldn't ignore that. So this one case that I was talking about, honestly, he'd spent a shed ton of money before I'd certainly come in on the scene. And okay, Mark, court cases are just a money earning for different bodies, institution, buddies. Yeah, no, I agree. So, you know, I think this one guy, though, he'd spent like 250k, ridiculous, before I came in on the scene. And here's the thing that I hear a lot: if only I'd found you sooner. So, you know, it's a thing. And I think the way that courts, the whole profession, I think, moving forward, is going to be different. I mean, the one fact we do know now is that most cases that are walking through the doors of family law are people who represent themselves. But there's a massive gap, because on one hand, you've got solicitors and barristers and all the stuff that goes with that. And then there's a huge gap of either being completely, what we call in the trade, naked litigants in persons. there's that midway point, isn't there, between people who can't afford or don't want. I mean, listen, spoiler alert, 2/3 of my clients come to me not because they can't afford a solicitor, but they don't want one. Okay, so there's a myth buster that people are only using McKenzie Friends because they can't afford a solicitor. Hashtag not true, because it isn't. All right, but there is a gap, if you will, that a lot of people are trying to bridge. So if you think that you would like to sort of change the way that you do things and you want to become a McKenzie Friend, I'm training people on a one-to-one basis, and let me just tell you a little bit about that training. So the training, I cover not just private law child proceedings, but I also cover divorce, finance, non-molestation orders and occupation orders. And the reason I do that is because the people that I train, I want to know and trust. Okay, so I am super picky. I get queries all the time to train. I turn away a lot, okay, because I honestly think that you need to have the right attitude to do this. I can teach all the stuff, the learning, the legal side of things, and I'm not just going to teach the legal side of things, okay, but it's also about the soft power, like how are you actually going to deal with a client that's having a panic attack, okay? Because I tell you what, all those dusty books mean nothing when your client is having a panic attack and can't face the thought of speaking to Kafkas, okay? Yeah, so there's that. All right. The other thing that that I do with my trainees is I like to support my tribe. Okay, and it really is. I use that word carefully. We now are lucky enough to have people. Some of you guys have been with us for years by this point, okay? And first of all, I just want to thank you for staying with us. You guys know that we've done lots of free stuff. There's loads of blogs. I mean, I'm doing live here, sort of helping out, doing a load of free stuff. There's blogs, there's vlogs, there's articles, there's a free cheat sheet as well, okay? So if you want that free cheat sheet, just holler and let me know. For those of you that subscribe to the cheat sheet, by the way, you kind of get updates, you get a newsletter, so anything that's of use to you, we kind of email and message that out. So the people that I pick and the people that I work with and train are specially handpicked. So if you think you've got what it takes, I'm not talking about sort of nous necessarily, or, you know, you don't need to be academic, because this is not academic exercise, all right? But well, it is, but it's that ongoing support, because it's a little bit like when you learn to drive. You know, once you've learned to, you learn to drive when you pass your test, right? Right. So on that basis, okay, if this is something that interests you, then shout at me, and let's have a, not actually shout at me, okay, but just what I mean to say is get in touch and we'll have that conversation. Mark, hello darling. All right. Solicitors are under contract with local authority and courts manage you and stop you speaking your truth. Well, so here's the thing, right? Yeah, I kind of agree with that, not completely. So what happens often is people who are litigants in person, or even if they're represented, people's view of what happens in a courtroom often differs to what actually happens, and that's going to happen because there's emotions involved. You're not going to get anything more emotive than your children. One of the things that people have often said with working with us is that people find this, and we encourage this, we encourage a proactive approach rather than a reactive approach. As for speaking your truth, listen, I learned ages ago, okay, that I could not script people. Listen, if I think you're barking and I think that you're barking up the wrong tree, I will be the first one to tell you. And I do, without reserve, okay? So, and it might be the case, I think, well, you know, if you say this is going to damage your case. But one of the things that a lot of people feel, they feel under when they're with the solicitors, that they don't feel like they have their voice. Half the time people don't understand what's going on in those proceedings because there's a certain language, there's a certain court language, you know. And listen, when I get rights of audience, that I adopt that court language because, you know, the court expect that. But when I'm dealing with you guys, you know, do you give a shit if I talk about ex parte applications? Probably not. If I was to talk to you about A versus A, would you care? No. What you care about is seeing your kids. What you care about is getting a result. What you care about more than anything is getting through this process, this stressful process. Listen, family law assistants have been around for about 13 years now, okay? And we've seen it all. There ain't nothing that we haven't seen, okay? I'm just going to read some more comments. Family court is in breach of the Human Rights Act and continue to breach it until you do. Mark, listen, there are a bunch of people out there that want to campaign to fight and fight that fight. That's not me. Okay, so spoiler alert, I'm not campaigning. I'm not doing any of that. And there's a reason for that, okay? So the reason for that is, listen, you pick your fights, all right? There are lots of people and there are lots of charities who do and campaign for change, okay? And I salute that, because I think the family law court just generally is a little antiquated, and I have no slur on any individual or any court, but I think as a whole it's a bit antiquated and a bit clunky, all right? And I'm aiming for diplomacy here. So fight that fight, but that's not our fight. That's not family law assistance's fight. Family law assistance has taken the view that, honestly, we work with what we've got, all right? Nobody cares, all right? Nobody cares if there's a systematic change when they're sat in court. They don't. What they want is to see their kids. That's what they want. What they want is to get through this process. What they want is to be heard. So we've invested our time, money, effort, because there's a whole background stuff that many of you see. Well, some of you do, I don't know. But like, you know, there's a whole background stuff. There's a whole team that kind of help with the running of this thing, okay? So we've invested in a really good infrastructure. We've invested in the lives, the blogs, the Ask Us Anything. So yeah, so that's where we've really invested our time. So if you want to fight that good fight, fine, but that's not what we are about. David, if only you had the money, I'd have the help. Yeah, right. So one of the things that I'm going to do, there are some people who just generally can't afford a lot at all. So one of the things I'm going to be doing is I'm going to put on some masterclasses. To that end, if you want to see anything and you want anything specific, I've got my own ideas of what I think would be excellent. But, you know, listen, I'm in your hands. What would you like to see a masterclass on? Tell me and I will deliver it. I'll probably charge a few quid for running it, okay? Because I want to make this a success and give you value. So what do you want to see as a masterclass? Let me know and I'll do it. All right. So on that note, okay, I'm going to skedaddle now, all right? And just take, I think I'm going to take it easy. I don't know. Is it gin o'clock yet? I don't know. Anyway, listen, take care, guys, and stay safe. Mwah.